And I'm here to plan and design the perfect extension. So you've got an idea you need some more space, but why? What are the drivers for that? What is your motivation for doing the extension? How much money are you going to need to do it? And what is the space you actually need? And what other issues are there to address? Like, will I need planning permission? Who do you need to help you? And what's your time scale? Now, the motivation is the big one that we always ask people, why do you want this? You know, room's too small, there's not access to the sun, I can't see the garden, I got access is really difficult, drives around the back, that kind of thing. In this case, it was to try and get the sun and views out from channel conversion. And how much money do you need? Now, extensions typically with high performance materials are to be around the £2,000 per square metre mark. A 50 square metre extension is likely to cost you around 100 grand. So make sure you really need the space and use the existing space in the house as far as possible. This current project puts a big kitchen partly within the depth of the existing house to minimise the additional bill. And how much space do you actually need? People often want things that are too big, but think about how big these spaces you use now are. Are they too big, too small, wrong shape? And what relationship do they need to have? This client set up a wonderful diagram that really helped us with the plan for this particular project. And are there other issues? Maintenance, access. This one's got the drive around the back and they're really just using a back door. It's okay, I'm just doing a test run for time. And we addressed those with a new extension that put a front door on the back and opened up the kitchen to the garden. And there will eventually be a fence between the two. And will you need planning permission? There are lots of resources online. The planning portal has a wide range of guides that give you a heads up on the things you can and can't do to particular property types. Well worth a look. You need to help me. Now, the benefits of architectural design are enormous. Many will just draw up what you ask them to, but we take a step back and say, well, why are you asking for this? What are the other ways of going about it, and what are the opportunities to improve every aspect of the house during the project? And how long is it going to take? Well, looking at this, the lead-in is normally about 6 months when you look at all the activities that there are. It's particularly if planning permission was needed, which takes 2 months on its own. You can be quicker than that if it's permitted development, which we referred to previously. And then what we consider the 5 key things for it is, one is aspire. It doesn't just have to be an in-keeping with the existing house. You really dream on day one about what you can have. Work with what's there already. So there is an existing building there. Use the rooms properly before you consider how big the extension needs to be. And do consider all the options. There are lots of ways of going about it, not just the first thing you thought of. And consider moving rooms. Just because that was the kitchen when you moved in, it doesn't mean it should be the kitchen now. And then work with the elements you actually need. So I'm just doing a test run, so don't worry for a recording. Work with what is actually needed, like the walls, roof and floor, and windows and roof lights to create the space that you actually want. And a really big one is improve the energy efficiency and carbon emissions of your existing building and lower them as possible in the new building. And we illustrate these points through our project work. So aspirations, literally have a blank sheet of paper on day one. Forget the house, forget the limitations, forget planning. What would you have? And these are a number of things people have brought me, apart from Basil Fawlty's Herds of Wildebeest and the view out the window, is a view. Rouen Cathedral, Swedish Birch Forest, Maldives, hut in the sea in the Maldives. And collect and share as many things as possible. These are other buildings, but they could be interiors, materials, landscapes, paintings, as you've seen, just whatever drives you and help inform your designers which things you particularly like. And there's a certain theme going on in this collection of photos from the clients. Working with what you have. The sun always rises in the east and sets in the west. Often it doesn't land in the rooms you want it to in the current house. So how can you address that? Say the kitchen's on the east side, the rooms on the west side, so they follow the sun around during the day. You might have views overlooking privacy issues, and all these can be addressed in the new work. And considering options, say there are lots of ways. They can be cheaper, more expensive. They can be more dramatic. With things that, if you think literally outside the box, that you didn't consider. And on this one, we simply wanted a small room to add to another bedroom to their house, but it actually compromised the existing ones rather a lot. So we looked at a number of ways and came up with the twin wing idea, and through our 3D modelling package helped the clients decide on this, which completely transformed the garden front, the brise soleil that dealt with the sunlight as well. And working with what's needed, this is prior to fit out, but does show what just walls, roofs, windows and roof lights can actually do to a space that you can create wonderful space. You don't need to add feature stairs and feature fireplaces and feature this. You can just work with the elements that you need to create wonderful space. And low energy, low carbon design. So this is the same project from before. It uses the MBC passive house. Passive, is it called passive frame? MBC. Passive frame and passive slab to absolutely minimize the heat loss, very low embodied carbon. And this has meant the house now has a heating prediction of £65 a year, but they haven't actually had the heating on this winter yet. So what strategies are there? It's fairly simple. You can talk yourself out of extending at all by reassessing the space you have. You can extend outwards, single or 2 stories or more, or you can extend up into the roof space. And of course you can do both. Now, in this case, it just made sense for the clients to mirror their existing house and do an in-keeping extension. But we showed that there are other ways of doing this to achieve a more dramatic effect. So, not extending at all in this case was a house that had been extended, made the hallway horribly dark, the dining hall horribly dark, and was could have a wonderful view of the castle, and sorry, they were planning to extend because the rooms were too small, planning to extend the depth of their very narrow garden, which then dropped away into a valley, so that they could have sunshine and views to the local castle. It meant they actually have to extend the garden around with some decking over the neighbour's land to get around it. So the existing plan shows the new extension on the right, the dark dining hall lit by a half-glazed window with 3 little utility rooms on the end, and then two small rooms in the existing house. Basically, the client's plan was to build a £75,000 sunroom and abandon the 2 rooms in between, effectively, and leave the hallway dark. We thought this wasn't a terribly good idea, so we reassessed the space they had, and by taking the chimney breast out, we could create a large living room with sun from the south side and views out to the north, and take the 3 small rooms out just by building a small toilet and boiler room in the little gap in between the house and the new extension, and put a big window into a view of the local castle and open up the dining room to a bigger space and light. The total cost was £12,000, so and they've got better space than they had previously. Another case of actually extending out, they just had the most bizarre additions on the back and a huge garage, which was of little use to them, with very poor access to the garden, a dark kitchen, amazing views front and rear, but no real way of accessing them. So an option appraisal looked at removing the new additions really and going back to the core structure and extending across the back and down the side to create a lovely kitchen, dining, living space, and on the way in from the tiny postage stamp hallway, moving the stairs and the sidewalk to create a large dining hall with enough space to come in with 2 children and other paraphernalia, leaving a little snug off to the left, and a beautiful top-lit stair, which brings light into the centre of the plan at all times. And then exploring what you do. So here we plan to restore the front and use modern materials, but in a reasonably traditional pitch roof form for the extensions. So this front was restored, external wall insulation, secondary glazing, renewed throughout, and the rear really taking the existing roof forms and extending those out into 2 child's bedrooms over the kitchen, dining, living space with great access to the garden. So that's the existing view with a very strange little 2-foot wide extension on the right. Becomes exactly the same view and becomes this lovely elevation to the garden. In contrast to that, we have this much altered actually stone cottage in the Cotswolds that we wanted to totally renew and live in forever and deal with a lot of the problems. And in this case, we achieved permission for a totally contrasting extension with a new roof, fully restoring the cottage to better than it was originally, and adding some very, very modern space on the garden side. Extending up, this is clearly Cornwall now. We work all over the country, and this is a fantastic elevated spot, views over the south Cornish coast, but a tiny little bungalow that could do more with the plot it had. So the idea was to open up the ground floor to living space for 8 to 10 people. Lovely conservatory actually, leave a snug at the bottom, and then create 4 bedrooms upstairs, each with a view out from the modest hallway in the centre. So this went from through the proposed view, really making the most of the plot without actually taking up any more of the garden. And again, in contrast to that, something a bit more radical. This unimproved Waits house from the 60s in Wolverhampton, totally encased and capped with a green roofed box with 4 bedrooms and a library for 10,000 books throughout the house actually. External wall insulation on the ground floor for a dramatic transformation in both looks and performance. And finally, extending out and up, and you're restricted, such as this little terrace in central Cambridge, 3.6 metres wide, 3.6 metre wide plot, and the usual small extensions to the rear, completely blocking views and access to the garden. So our strategy was to go from one double and 1 single bedroom to 3 double bedrooms by increasing the size of the first floor rear, going wall to wall on the ground and doing an attic conversion. And in addition, there was a 1-bed garden annex was proposed at the end of the long garden. And it requires a highly technical solution. It all has to fit together perfectly. But the ground floor is creates one big space with kitchen and living room with a separate snug at the front. 2 double bedrooms on the first floor, 1 ensuite, and then a double bedroom in the attic too. This went from 280,000 purchased to 560,000 when it was complete. And in the end, the planners really insisted on us using brick, but the overall effect is something that really connects well with the garden. Still quite modest, but a good-sized room. And those strategies that show you how to make the perfect expansion. So briefly in summary, Spire workforce then, consider all the options, workforce needed, and make sure you use low energy, low carbon design. I'm now going to head over to the chat room to take your questions.